Takaichi in Tuesday's parliamentary vote. Now for this hour, we start with Russia and Ukraine. Russian Ministry of Defense has announced the capture of 2 more towns in eastern Ukraine, the town of Chunishine in the Donetsk Oblast and the town of Poltavka in Zaporizhia. They have been captured by Russian forces as announced by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Russian forces have also claimed to have successfully destroyed an American-made HIMARS missile defense system deployed in the region. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking back at President Zelensky and President Trump's discussion or meeting, do you think anything has changed ever since?
It's certainly good to be with you. Very often, in my own humble opinion, it's very difficult to read some of this. There is no doubt about it that President Trump genuinely is trying to bring people to the table, as others are, to end this war. We remind ourselves of the Russian invasion on February 2022. Also, as we may go on to discuss, where there's this discussion of is Tomahawk missiles going to be put into the theater of war, and all these other issues. There is so much that is talked about, threats. We want this to end, and it's working out constantly how NATO is then reinforcing itself, and of course, as I've said, people trying to bring people to the table to end this, and also part of that discussion where Russia has taken the land that it has from Ukraine, then understandably the Ukrainians are saying we want that land back. We want Russia to retreat out of this, and then there's going to be a rebuild and reparations to then be paid in this situation. And how the negotiations to even get that far to begin to discuss any of these, we are then realizing on both sides that that is not easy. And without sounding as if you're sort of being blanket in one's discussion, this has to end as fast and as quickly as possible. And at the moment, on a personal level, I don't see that happening. However, by then attacking the Russian infrastructure in regard to gas and oil and energy, that is what has been going on here. And to be fair, it's also been going on both sides. Asuma.
And Mark, going back to the Tomahawk missiles, there's a sense of hesitation on U.S.'s side to supply them, Ukraine with this. What do you think this reflects? Do you think this reflects a genuine concern about escalation, or do you think that this is a commitment by President Trump, about getting them to sign a ceasefire deal instead?
I'm not a technical expert on this, but the obvious question that can be raised, if you then put Tomahawk missiles or any kind of technology like this into any theater of war, then you would have to train the people that you are then supplying those to. Is that going to happen? Does it then mean that the oversight of these Tomahawks are then seen by the Americans themselves? Would they then be supplying American technology, American soldiers operative of these rockets? And of course, that then opens up a huge debate, because then you put those rockets there, who is firing them, and then it makes that particular country then responsible to that. Is it all part of, we will threaten because we want to get Putin to the table? Because economically, Russia, it's not in a good place in regard to one's war chest wearing out because of the war that has been perpetuated since February 22. It raises all of those moral issues, Asuma. Frankly, I don't think I think it's far more complicated. But yes, you are right, as in there's been a threat. Maybe people are then rethinking that one through. Asuma.
Yes. Thank you, Mark, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has recently met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House to discuss the possibility of providing long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. The meeting, which Zelensky has described later as frank and difficult, has left him empty-handed as Trump has ruled out the deal. Meanwhile, Trump has stated that he hopes the war can be resolved without the need for these missiles, as he believes the U.S. is already providing adequate military support to Ukraine. Now, these Tomahawk missiles have a range of up to 1,600 kilometers, making them a key strategic asset for Ukraine. The missiles would allow Ukraine to strike military targets deep within Russia, putting pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin to negotiate a peace deal. Ukraine has also strongly believed that these missiles could be a game changer in ending the war. While Russia fears they would escalate the war further and damage its relations with the United States. Moreover, the European Commission's Kaja Kallas has promised to mobilize defense support for Ukraine, including the potential delivery of Tomahawks. However, Russia has criticized the West, claiming that there is a lack of political will for peace and that such actions only prolong the conflict. Now for this discussion, we go back to Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for staying with us. Now, going back to this, President Trump seems to be focused on brokering a peace deal with Russia. Do you think this is his strategic move for global stability or for maybe future Nobel Peace Prize, or does it risk undermining Ukraine's defense efforts?
I mean, the Peace Prize has come and gone in this round, and as you are fully aware, in regard to the Trump administration, whether they've been dealing with Armenia, Azerbaijan, and other parts of the world, whether we're looking at Sudan, an ending of the conflict in Sudan, we have to remind ourselves of the awful, we have a number of these conflicts around the world. We also remind ourselves what's happening in Nigeria. And I think there is genuinely within various people within the Trump administration, of course, they want this to end, where of course you are then lined with people that then want isolationism. The fact is that at the moment, in my humble opinion, this is only going in one direction, because this isn't stopping, and many people, including myself, we want this to then stop, because all it takes is it's a situation like we had in the First World War, where you take someone out and then suddenly it all blows up into a global conflict in the way that happened. This is what we're trying to avoid. Someone then puts a Tomahawk missile, it fires, as you said, to the range of it does, taking out a Russian city. The number one thing I would also say is that when drones are coming over into regard to European countries, they need to be, if they're proven, of course, where they've come from, or any identified flying object, shoot it down, get rid of it. This is not to be tolerated, particularly if this is Russia constantly challenging people's defensive. It's better that people have a talk and conversation and try and bring these two sides together. But on a personal level at the moment, there is so much for people to then give up. But we have to also remember the geopolitical changes that are going on. Where does Putin getting his support from? As you and I have discussed in the past, what is China doing? Where are they buying their energy from? Russia. What about Iranian support? What about North Korean support? All of that has to be remembered as these countries are trying to get the geopolitical hegemony away from America. They are wanting the worldview to change. This also has to be put into the mix as well. And yes, it makes it profoundly dangerous. We think that on the Russian side, nearly 1 million soldiers lost, the amount equivalent of that on the Ukrainian side, and all the devastation. This is appalling. It has to stop. And we want these people to come to the table and to genuinely seek peace and the end of this war. But at times it seems so far away. Asuma.
And Mark, lastly, how realistic is President Zelensky's request for U.S.'s security guarantees in the event of a ceasefire?
Um, Very interesting, especially when the conversation that America has had with Qatar. That's another discussion that we need to have for a number of hours. This may be, but of course, as you are fully aware, within America, there are people that are turning around and going, "Okay, you may do that, but we do not want to see American troops on the ground whatsoever." That is something is that the American administration doesn't want to do that, even though they're more than willing to then sell arms to NATO countries to then build up those defenses. In my opinion, that, and even though other European countries are saying, even the UK. Prime Minister Starmer saying, well, we're willing to put boots on the ground. Well, let's see how that works out. So America is far from willing to do that, even though it's got a number of hawks within America's senators, political positions, people like Lindsey Graham that may want something else, but he would, wouldn't he?
Yes.
That is what we're looking at. Do you put
Yes.
boots on the ground or not? And America is not willing to, in fact, do that.
Yes,
Asuma.
it seems like that. Thank you very much, Mark, for always joining us and sharing that insight. Now we